The planet Zetheria burned in silence. Once a world of sparkling oceans and tall crystal towers, it now lay in ruin, scarred by the fires of war. Smoke rose from shattered cities, and the skies were darkened by streaks of burning debris. The people of Zetheria had fought bravely, but the enemy was relentless. Among the chaos, one figure stood out, not for power, not for weaponry, but for the hope she carried in her very being. Princess Liara of Zetheria was more than a ruler. She was a symbol. Her silver hair shimmered like starlight, and her eyes reflected the wisdom of generations. But now she lay inside a crystal chamber, her body still, her chest rising only with shallow breaths. The attacks had left her broken, not physically alone, but in the very essence of her soul. She had been the last hope for her people. The royal line of Zetheria depended on her survival. And now, as the world outside crumbled, the energy that sustained her life, the mysterious soul energy that all Zetherians were born with, was fading. The longer she remained unconscious, the dimmer the spark within her would grow. If it vanished completely, the future of her people would be lost. The crystal chamber was a masterpiece of Zetherian technology, designed to protect her body and stabilize her fading life force. Light pulsed gently along the walls, casting soft, colorful patterns on the floor. Machines hummed quietly, scanning her vitals, trying to mend what the enemies had broken. Yet, despite all the technology, her soul remained beyond reach. Far above Zetheria, in the orbiting United Earth Alliance ship Aurora, Ethan studied the planet below. He was a human explorer and medic, chosen for his knowledge of alien physiology and his calm under pressure. His short brown hair and sharp eyes gave him a practical appearance, though it could not hide the intensity with which he studied this world. Ethan had not expected to find a royal figure trapped in war, let alone one whose very soul seemed on the brink of fading. He had trained for medical emergencies, but what he faced here went beyond science. Liara's condition was a mixture of biology, mysticism, and something he could not yet name. Her heartbeat, faint and irregular, was accompanied by subtle, wavering energy waves, Zetherian soul energy. He descended to the surface with a small crew, moving cautiously through the ruins. The smell of ash and burnt metal filled the air. Broken towers lay scattered like giant glass shards, and the streets were littered with debris. The few surviving citizens moved like shadows, frightened and exhausted, avoiding contact. When Ethan reached the crystal chamber, he paused. The structure was beautiful, even in this time of destruction, the intricate patterns of energy flowing across its surface mesmerizing. But it was not just beauty that drew him. It was the faint, almost imperceptible cry for help that reached him through the energy field. Something inside him responded. He placed his hands on the chamber, and for the first time he felt it clearly. The fading soul within. It was weak, fragile and slipping, yet it carried a power and grace unlike anything he had ever encountered. It was as if the princess's life force itself was calling him across worlds, begging for help. "Sir," one of his team members whispered, "are you sure this is safe?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He studied the faint energy waves, thinking about the risk. He could try to revive her using conventional medical methods, but they would not touch her soul. He could attempt something new, something untested, a direct soul connection. The risk was enormous. If it failed, not only would Liara die, but he might become trapped in her fading consciousness, unable to return to his own body. Yet he could not walk away. His training, his curiosity, and something deeper, a spark of empathy, drove him forward. "Prepare the stabilization units," he said finally. "I'm going in." The crew looked uneasy, but they obeyed. Ethan focused on the chamber, reaching out with his mind. He tried to feel the rhythm of Liara's soul, like dipping a hand into water that was barely there. It was faint at first, almost nothing, but gradually he began to perceive it. Tiny flickers of life, each pulse like a whisper. He closed his eyes, letting his consciousness drift toward her. He imagined her life, her experiences, and her pain, memories of loss, of leadership, of battles fought and won, and of love lost. All came to him in flashes. He realized that her soul was not just fading, it was frightened. She had witnessed the destruction of her world, the collapse of her people, and she had begun to give up hope. "Princess Liara," he whispered softly, "I am here. I will not let you fade." He did not know if she could hear him, but he felt the faintest response, a tremor in the energy field. It was encouraging enough to continue. Hours passed. Ethan remained connected, his mind intertwined with hers. He could feel her fear, the weight of responsibility that crushed her even in sleep. Yet he also sensed something else, a glimmer of strength, buried deep beneath the pain. It was fragile, but it was there. He realized that he could not save her with logic alone. She needed something more, human emotion, hope, and connection. He sent warmth, reassurance, and courage into her mind, reaching through the alien energy with empathy that transcended language, species, and understanding. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the first signs of response appeared. The crystal walls pulsed with brighter light, faintly in sync with the rhythm of her soul. A single tiny spark of consciousness flickered within her. It was almost imperceptible, but Ethan's heart leapt. "Keep going," he murmured. "I know you can fight." He drew on every memory he had of human resilience. Stories of people overcoming impossible odds, surviving disasters, and helping others even when their own strength failed. He fed these thoughts into her consciousness, blending hope and determination into a thread that could reach her. Time lost meaning as he continued. He could feel the bond forming between them, not physical, not purely mental, but something deeper. Her energy pulsed weakly, and yet it responded. It seemed to recognize him. Every flicker of life that returned was like a tiny victory, a promise that she might survive. Outside, the ruins of Zitharia seemed to wait, holding their breath. The citizens who had remained alive could sense a change, though they could not explain it. Some whispered prayers, some touched their hearts, and all hoped. Even in this broken world, life had a chance again. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ethan felt her presence solidify slightly. It was still fragile, but it was no longer slipping entirely. Her soul had noticed him, accepted his touch, and allowed a thread of connection to form. He opened his eyes and looked at her motionless form. She had not awakened yet, but he could sense her, truly sense her. For the first time since the attack, he felt hope. Ethan leaned closer to the chamber. "You're not alone," he said quietly. "I'm here with you. We will fight this together." The crystal walls shimmered, responding to his words. Tiny lights danced along the surface, reflecting faintly in the broken streets outside. The princess was still unconscious, but she had begun to awaken inside. Her soul, once fading, had found something it could hold on to, a human heart willing to fight alongside it. Ethan knew the road ahead would be difficult. The connection was risky, exhausting, and unknown. But in that moment, he did not care. He had glimpsed the possibility of a miracle, a spark of life that might save a princess and a planet alike. As night fell over Zitharia, the ruined world seemed quieter. The fires of battle had dimmed in the distance, but inside the crystal chamber, a tiny light continued to pulse. It was a fragile hope, but it was there. And as long as it existed, the fight was not over. Ethan sat beside the chamber, ready for what came next. He had touched her soul, reached into the darkness, and held on. And somewhere, deep within the fading energy, Liara's spirit had noticed. The miracle had begun. The crystal chamber glowed softly in the darkness, its pulsing light reflecting off shattered buildings beyond the walls. Ethan remained seated beside it, his hand hovering over the surface as he focused on the faint energy he had felt the day before. Liara's soul, fragile as a candle flame in a storm, still flickered within the chamber. Yet, unlike yesterday, he sensed a small, growing presence, a recognition of him, a quiet response to his care. Ethan closed his eyes and let his thoughts flow freely toward her. He imagined her life as vividly as he could, picturing her walking through the towering crystal halls of her palace, the way she moved with quiet authority, the way her people looked to her for guidance and protection. He allowed himself to feel her loneliness, her fear, and her hope, even if it was only a whisper. In response, a faint pulse traveled through the chamber, like the tiny heartbeat of her consciousness stirring. It was almost imperceptible, but Ethan felt it clearly. A thrill ran through him, not of excitement, but of solemn responsibility. This was not merely a mission anymore. It was a chance to reach a life, to touch a soul across worlds. He took a deep breath. "Princess Liara," he whispered softly, "I am here. You are not alone. I can feel your heart. I can feel your soul. Let me help you." He extended his mind further, gently brushing against her consciousness. It was delicate, like walking on thin ice. Her thoughts were fragmented at first, fleeting images of her childhood, flashes of crystal towers, her mother's soft voice, the weight of her father's expectations. Then came the pain, the fires of war, the screams of those she could not save, the helplessness of watching her people fall. Ethan did not shy away. He met her pain with calmness, with warmth, and with the human emotion that transcended logic. He shared with her the strength he had seen in humanity, small acts of courage, compassion in the darkest moments, and determination even when the odds were impossible. Slowly, he sent a thread of hope into her mind, a faint lifeline she could grasp. At first, she resisted, not with malice, but with fear. Her energy was too weak to fully respond, and her soul had begun to shrink back, as if retreating from him. Ethan felt her hesitation. He did not push, did not force the connection. Instead, he remained patient, letting his presence reassure her. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. Time had lost meaning in this strange communion. Ethan allowed himself to sink deeper, imagining the sound of her laughter, the feeling of the wind across Zetheria's fields, and the gentle touch of a hand held in trust. He wove these images into her consciousness, letting them settle gently into the corners of her mind. A soft pulse, stronger than before, ran through the chamber. It was faint, but it was unmistakable. Liara's soul had responded. A spark of recognition, a flicker of awareness, a fragile thread of connection had formed. Ethan felt a rush of relief but tempered it with care. He knew this was only the beginning. "Do you feel me?" he whispered again. "I am here, and I will not let you fade." This time, a tiny flicker of light traveled across the chamber walls, as though the crystal itself acknowledged the connection. Then came the first voice, weak, almost like a breeze through the trees. "Who?" Ethan's heart skipped. He had not expected words so soon. He leaned closer, speaking gently, carefully, knowing that any abruptness could shatter the delicate link. "I am Ethan," he said softly. "I am here to help you. You are not alone, Princess Liara." The chamber pulsed again, brighter this time. He felt warmth, an alien warmth, unfamiliar yet comforting, flowing from her consciousness toward his. Her soul was fragile, trembling, but it had begun to notice him, to trust him. In response, visions appeared in Ethan's mind, not his own, but hers. He saw her walking through the crystal corridors of her palace, smiling at attendants who now only existed in memory. He saw the grand festivals of Cytheria, where citizens danced under twin moons, their joy echoing through the towers. And then came the shadows, visions of war, of enemies striking, of citizens fleeing, and the moment she had been struck and left in the chamber. Ethan flinched, but he steadied himself. He realized he had to guide her through the memories, not push them away. He allowed her to see the pain, but he also sent strength, courage, and reassurance. He whispered encouragements, small truths about resilience, and the knowledge that life could endure even the harshest moments. Gradually, her resistance began to soften. The flickers of light grew steadier, and he felt a pulse of curiosity emanating from her soul. She was beginning to perceive him as more than an external presence. She sensed the warmth of his human heart, the care in his mind, the dedication of someone willing to reach across worlds for her. "Your people, your world," Ethan murmured. "There is hope. You are needed. We can face this together." The flickers of light expanded, creating soft patterns along the crystal walls. For the first time, the chamber seemed alive, not just as a protective structure, but as a conduit for their connection. Liara's soul energy, once dim and fragile, now danced faintly with life. Then came the next challenge, a surge of fear, memories of loss, and the weight of her responsibilities threatened to overwhelm her. Ethan could feel her soul recoiling, a pull backward into darkness. He clenched his hands, forcing himself to focus. "You are stronger than you know," he whispered. "I am here with you. You do not have to face this alone. Take my hand, even if it is not physical. Even if it is only a thread of thought, I will hold you." He poured everything he could into her mind. Hope, courage, empathy, and a deep, unwavering human determination. Slowly, he felt her tremble, then stabilize. The pulse of her soul, once erratic and fading, now held a rhythm. She was listening. She was responding. Ethan allowed himself a small breath of relief, but did not relax. This connection, while promising, was still fragile. Any sudden movement, any distraction could shatter it. He kept his mind focused entirely on her, observing her responses, noting even the smallest flickers of emotion or awareness. Then, for the first time, a thought reached him clearly. Not a memory, not a fragment, but a coherent spark of consciousness. "Who are you?" Ethan's heart raced. That single, simple question was proof that she was aware, that her mind had returned in some small way. He responded gently, carefully, using words that conveyed calm and reassurance. "I am Ethan," he said again. "I am a human from another world. I am here to help you. You are safe now, Princess Liara." Another pulse of light spread through the chamber. He felt her curiosity, her faint trust, and even a hint of gratitude. The bond, though tiny, was growing. Over the next hours, Ethan continued to build the connection. He shared stories of courage, resilience, and survival. He imagined human cities, simple acts of kindness, the laughter of children, and the quiet moments of triumph against hardship. Each image was a seed, a small anchor to her soul. Liara's energy began to mirror his efforts. The faint spark grew steadier, and he could feel her consciousness stretching outward, responding to him, trying to form a bridge between their worlds. It was exhausting, but Ethan did not falter. He knew that the moment she fully awakened, their bond would be the difference between life and fading into darkness. By the time Cytheria's twin suns began to rise, the first signs of real consciousness had returned. Liara's soul, once fading and fragile, now pulsed with faint light and curiosity. Her voice was still weak, but it had begun to speak again, to communicate. Ethan rested a hand on the crystal chamber, exhausted but determined. "You are not alone," he whispered. "We will bring you back, together." Outside, the citizens of Zetheria paused in their recovery efforts. They could not see what was happening within the crystal, but somehow they felt the change. A quiet hope settled over the broken city. Somewhere, deep in the shadows of ruin, life had taken root again. Inside the chamber, a tiny flicker of understanding passed through Liara's consciousness. She sensed him, not just as a human, not just as a rescuer, but as a bridge to the world beyond her fading isolation. And for the first time since the attack, she felt a spark of life, a connection that could guide her back. Ethan leaned back, exhausted but filled with cautious hope. He had touched her soul, reached across the vastness of species and worlds, and held on. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be challenges, dangers, and tests. But for now, the miracle had begun. Liara's soul was no longer fading. It had noticed him. It had responded. And as long as he remained, as long as he held the connection, there was hope. For her people, and for a future that had seemed impossible. The crystal chamber glowed brighter than before, a gentle shimmer that reflected off the ruined city outside. Ethan had been by Liara's side for hours, no, for what felt like days. Time had lost meaning in the delicate balance between her fading soul and his human determination. The faint pulses of energy now flowed more steadily, and for the first time he felt a real connection to the princess within. Her consciousness was no longer hiding entirely in shadows. Small fragments of thought, memory, and emotion reached out to him. Each flicker of awareness felt like a victory. Yet Ethan knew the hardest part was still to come. It was one thing to make her notice him. It was another to bring her fully back, to awaken a soul that had almost vanished. He closed his eyes and focused, allowing his mind to drift entirely toward her. In the quiet space between consciousness and dream, he reached for her, not with force, but with empathy. He sent warmth, courage, and hope, threads of life meant to anchor her spirit. "I am here, Princess Liara," he thought. "I will not let you fade. You are not alone." A small flicker of light pulsed in response, spreading across the crystal walls in soft, flowing patterns. He felt it, not just with his mind, but with something deeper, a quiet recognition that she was trying to reach back. Suddenly, her energy shifted. It was subtle at first, a tiny tremor that ran through the chamber like a ripple across water. Ethan noticed immediately. She was trying to respond, but fear held her back. The events of the war, the destruction of her people, and the weight of her responsibilities pressed on her like invisible chains. Ethan's heart ached at the thought of it, but he did not waver. He could not rush her. Instead, he let his presence speak for him. He focused on the small details, the simple images that could bring comfort. He pictured her standing under the twin moons of Zetheria, feeling the soft breeze across her face. He pictured children laughing in crystal courtyards, citizens dancing in festivals she had once watched over with pride. "This is your world, Liara. Your people are waiting. You are stronger than this darkness." He let the words flow gently into her consciousness, imagining the softest touch, the quietest reassurance. Slowly, the tremor in her energy began to stabilize. The pulse grew steadier, almost like a heartbeat, almost like a spark ready to ignite. Then came a sudden jolt of fear from her. Memories of the attack, flashes of fire, and cries of citizens she could not save threatened to overwhelm her fragile soul. Ethan felt it as clearly as if it were his own pain. The crystal walls shivered with the surge of emotion, and the light dimmed for a brief moment. "Do not fear," he thought urgently. "You are not alone. I am here." He poured all of his energy into her consciousness, guiding her gently through the memories, showing her that she had survived, that the world still needed her. He sent flashes of human resilience, stories of survival, courage, and small victories in the darkest times. He wove them carefully into her mind, letting them act as a bridge back to life. Slowly, her fear began to recede. The pulses of light grew stronger, steadier, and brighter. Her energy was responding to him more clearly now, no longer fragile but tentative, curious. She was testing the connection, exploring it, trying to understand this human who had reached across worlds to touch her soul. "Who are you?" her voice whispered in his mind, faint and trembling, like a leaf brushing against a window in a storm. Ethan smiled softly. "I am Ethan," he replied gently. "A human. I came to help you. I am here with you, and I will not let you fade." The chamber pulsed again, brighter than before, as if the crystal itself had acknowledged the bond forming between them. Ethan could feel her curiosity, her awareness, and, most importantly, a faint spark of trust. He continued carefully, not pushing, but guiding. He imagined the simplest joys of life, projecting them into her mind, the warmth of sunlight on skin, the sound of laughter, the comfort of a safe place. Slowly, she responded, letting these gentle threads anchor her spirit. The tremors of fear softened, replaced by a fragile calm. For the first time, he felt more than a flicker. He felt a pulse of thought, a coherent presence that was reaching back toward him. She was aware, awake in the shadows of her consciousness, and trying to connect. "You are safe," he whispered. "I am here. You do not have to be afraid." Another ripple of energy surged through the chamber. Ethan felt it strongly, as if her soul were stretching, reaching for him, testing the bond. The light on the walls shimmered with new patterns, delicate arcs of color that reflected her awakening energy. He could sense her memories more clearly now. Childhood memories of her family, celebrations in the palace. Quiet moments walking through gardens, all of them mingled with the pain of war. Ethan allowed the painful memories to surface, guiding her through them with care. He reminded her of her strength, the victories she had won, and the resilience that lived within her. Slowly, her awareness grew. She began to respond in small ways. Tiny pulses of energy, faint echoes of thought, a shimmer of light in her aura that had not been there before. Ethan felt a thrill of hope, but kept himself steady. The connection was still fragile. One wrong thought, one burst of distraction, could shatter the bond they were building. As the hours passed, the pulse of her soul strengthened. Ethan felt her curiosity, a tentative reaching out toward him. She seemed to understand that he was there not as a threat, but as a guide, a bridge to life. He projected warmth and understanding, letting her feel the gentle touch of care across the vast difference between their species. Then came a moment of clarity, a breakthrough that took Ethan's breath away. A full, coherent thought reached him. "You helped me?" "Yes," he replied softly. "I am here. I will not let you fade. You are not alone, Liara." The crystal walls flared with light, bright and steady, reflecting the awakening energy of her soul. For the first time, Ethan sensed more than a flicker. He felt a pulse that was growing stronger, alive with curiosity, awareness, and trust. Her consciousness stretched, tentative at first, exploring the space around her. She could feel him clearly now, not just as a presence, but as a lifeline. A thread of connection, delicate but strong, had formed between them. It was not just empathy. It was understanding, a bridge across worlds, a bond that defied explanation. Ethan allowed himself a small smile. They were making progress. She was awakening. He continued to guide her carefully, showing her not only safety, but hope. He projected visions of life restored, of a world healed, of citizens looking to their princess with trust and admiration. He allowed her to glimpse the possibility of survival, the chance to rise again and lead her people. Her energy pulsed brighter, stronger. She reached further into consciousness, exploring the connection, and slowly, her voice began to form more clearly. "I feel," she whispered, weakly but with determination. "I can see." Ethan's heart raced. He leaned closer to the chamber. "Yes, Liara, you can see. You can feel. You are awake. You are here." A soft glow filled the chamber, and the crystal walls seemed to resonate with her energy. Her consciousness was no longer flickering faintly. It was present, aware, and responsive. She had survived the darkness that had threatened to consume her. Ethan rested a hand gently on the crystal, exhausted but elated. "You did it," he whispered. "You held on. You are alive." Outside the chamber, the people of Zytheria paused in their recovery work. Though they could not see what had happened, a quiet sense of hope settled over them. Somewhere in the broken city, life had returned. Inside the chamber, Liara's soul pulsed steadily now, strong enough to respond fully to Ethan's guidance. She could feel him, understand him, and even trust him. And as she slowly began to awaken, the first real spark of life returned to her eyes. For the first time since the attack, she was truly aware. The princess of Zytheria, once fading, was rising again, and beside her, Ethan remained. A human who had reached across the stars, touched her soul, and guided her back from the brink of disappearance. It was a miracle in the quiet ruins of a broken world. Ethan did not yet know what challenges awaited once she fully opened her eyes, but he knew one thing: the bond between them had formed, and with it, a chance not only to survive but to rebuild. And in that fragile connection, the future of Zytheria had begun to shine. The crystal chamber shimmered with a warm glow, brighter than it had been since the attack. Princess Liara stirred fully, her silver hair falling around her shoulders as she slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was the calm, steady presence of Ethan sitting beside her. Her gaze lingered on him, searching for understanding, reassurance, and something she could not yet name. Ethan smiled softly, keeping his hand near hers on the crystal surface. "You're awake," he whispered. "Welcome back, Princess Liara." For a moment, she simply stared, absorbing her surroundings and the strange, comforting presence of this human who had reached into her very soul. Her energy pulsed steadily now, strong and alive, and with it came clarity. She remembered everything: the attack, the darkness that had threatened to consume her, and the human who had guided her through it. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice still weak but filled with awe. You saved me." He shook his head gently. "You saved yourself," he said. "I only helped you find the way back." "You are stronger than you realize." Liara's eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper, an awareness of a connection that went beyond words or species. She could feel his sincerity, the warmth of his human heart, and the courage that had reached through the void between worlds. For the first time since the attack, she felt hope, real hope. The chamber doors opened automatically as attendants approached, cautiously at first. They had been monitoring the energy levels from outside, unsure if the princess would ever awaken. Now they paused in awe. Their princess, thought lost, was alive and conscious. Whispers spread through the corridors. She had returned. Liara sat up slowly, supported by Ethan and the crystal chamber's gentle energy fields. Her aura radiated calm authority, her soul fully awakened and strong. The attendants bowed deeply, tears glistening in their eyes. The princess's survival was more than a miracle. It was a beacon of hope for the broken world. Ethan stepped back, allowing her to rise fully. "Your people are waiting," he said softly. "They need their princess, and you are ready to lead again." Liara nodded. feeling the weight of her responsibilities settle on her shoulders once more. But this time, she did not feel alone. She had a connection, a bridge between her and another world, and it gave her strength. The human who had reached into her soul had shown her that hope could exist even in the darkest times. She walked through the chamber, each step careful but confident. The attendants followed silently, aware that this was a moment of renewal for their people. Liara raised her hand slightly, signaling calm, and the soft glow of her aura seemed to extend outward, comforting the city beyond the chamber. Ethan watched, quietly amazed. He had seen humans survive incredible odds, but what he witnessed now, the awakening of an alien soul, a princess restored to her people, was beyond anything he had imagined. "Ethan," Liara said softly, turning to him, I owe you my life. How can I ever repay you?" Ethan shook his head. "You don't owe me anything," he said gently. "All I did was reach out. You found your way back yourself. That is what matters." She studied him, her eyes searching. There was something in his gaze, a combination of humility, strength, and unwavering determination that told her he spoke the truth. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel something entirely new: trust. As she stepped fully into her palace halls, the attendants moved aside, clearing a path for their princess. Citizens who had survived the attack began to gather, some cautiously, some with tears in their eyes. They had heard whispers of her survival, and now they could see it for themselves. Their princess had returned, and with her, the hope of rebuilding their world. Liara addressed them, her voice steady and commanding. "People of Zytheria," she said, "we have faced darkness, we have faced loss, but we are not defeated. We are alive, and we will rebuild our world together. We will honor those who fell, and we will rise stronger than before." The crowd erupted in quiet cheers, hands reaching toward her, eyes shining with relief and gratitude. Ethan stood to the side, allowing her this moment. He had done his part. He had helped her soul find its way, but the rest belonged to her strength, and to the resilience of Zytheria's people. Days passed, and the process of rebuilding began. The crystal chamber remained a symbol of hope, but Liara no longer needed it. She had fully awakened, her soul strong and radiant. Ethan worked alongside her, sharing knowledge of human technology, medicine, and strategy, blending it with Zytherian wisdom. Their partnership was one of mutual respect and trust, a bridge between worlds that inspired those around them. The people of Zytheria began to recover. Ruined buildings were repaired, crops replanted, and communication restored. And through it all, the story of the princess who had almost faded and the human who had reached across worlds to touch her soul spread like wildfire. It became a symbol of courage, empathy, and the power of connection across differences. Liara, now fully aware of the bond she shared with Ethan, found herself drawn to him, not only as a companion in leadership, but as someone who had shown her the depth of courage and kindness possible across species. She could feel the connection every time their thoughts brushed, every time their minds shared understanding, every time she felt the quiet strength of his presence. One evening, as the twin suns set over the recovering city, Liara and Ethan stood together on a balcony overlooking the plains of Zytheria. The sky glowed with streaks of pink and orange, and the gentle wind carried the scent of new growth and hope. "You brought me back," she said softly, her voice filled with wonder. "Not just to life, but to hope. I cannot thank you enough." Ethan smiled, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "You had the strength all along," he replied. "I only helped you find it again." Liara looked at him, her mind reaching for the words to express what she felt. Not just gratitude, but something deeper, a recognition of the bond that had formed between them, a connection that spanned worlds and species, a bridge of souls. "We will face the future together," she said finally. "Not as human and alien, but as partners. Cytheria and your world both have something to learn from this connection." Ethan nodded. Yes, together. The moment was quiet but filled with significance. Across the ruined city, people worked to rebuild their homes, restore their lives, and honor those who had been lost. But now, there was also celebration, a renewed belief in life, courage, and the unexpected miracles that could occur when beings reached out across differences. Liara turned her gaze back to the horizon, feeling a sense of purpose she had thought lost forever. The destruction of her world had tested her, nearly claiming her soul, but now she stood stronger, awakened, and ready to lead. She had survived the darkness, and she had discovered that hope could come in the most unexpected ways. Beside her, Ethan remained quietly steadfast, a reminder that even across vast differences, trust and courage could forge unbreakable bonds. Together, they had created something extraordinary, not just a partnership, but a testament to the strength of life, empathy, and the miracles that could happen when someone refused to give up. As the first stars began to shine in Cytheria's evening sky, Liara felt a sense of peace she had not known for years. She had awakened fully, her soul restored, her purpose clear. And beside her, the human who had touched her soul smiled gently, sharing the quiet triumph of a miracle achieved. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow over the recovering city. The crystal chamber, once a place of fragile life and fading energy, now stood as a symbol of hope, resilience, and connection. Liara had survived, and her people would thrive once more. In that moment, it was clear. The miracle was not just her awakening. It was the bond they had formed, the bridge between worlds, and the reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope could be found. And for Princess Liara, and for Ethan, and for all of Cytheria, a new dawn had truly begun.